You know, you get to where it was a game. It's the only way you could take it. You could look a guy in the face and shoot him. You didn't know. Of course, he tried to kill me. But you just have to blank it out. Some guys loved it. Surprising how, yeah, some people can do a thing like that and it doesn't bother. My mother had all 11 kids at home, and some of them are just barely a year apart. You never knew when you're going to go to bed and get up in the morning, Dad would say, hey, you have a new brother, sister, a new baby sister or brother. And nobody ever knew its mom was pregnant. It was just, oh yeah, what else is new? What's on TV? But we didn't have TV. And my mother told me the most it ever cost for any of these babies was $20. So it was a different world. I had two sisters. They were both born in November, following November. Helen was born, and then Barbara was born the following November. My brother Dick was born in February. I was born on March 13th and 28. My brother Dale was born on March 21st, 29. So we were pretty close. I don't know how Dad got all his work done. He was pretty busy. Yeah, we had to double up in bed sometimes. My brother Dick and I slept together, and Dale and Ronnie, who were the next down the line, slept together. And my two older sisters, Helen and Barbara, slept together. You know, not too many homes have 11 rooms in them, bedrooms in them. But no, I cannot recall of any time when we felt sorry for ourselves or thought that we were not as good as anybody else. I don't know if some of the kids thought we were poor. I don't know that we ever were. I know we never had an empty belly. And I was fortunate I was taller than my older brother Dick, so I didn't have to wear his hand-me-downs. You know, some of them did. Nobody ever thought about it. I mean, that was life. We had work to do, we did it. We got it done. And you could count on every birthday when you went to eat dinner that night, your plate would be upside down on the table and there'd be a 50-cent piece under it. That was something that was sure to be. But I know when we first moved to the farm, I went to Hickory College. I was in the 4th grade, and I had 3 brothers in the same classroom. Then we had 5th and 6th was in one room, which had a partition which didn't reach the ceiling, where the 7th and 8th was on the other side, so they could always hear what's going on. We had 2 outhouses at the school, one for the girl and one for the boys. We had to use the outhouses, and we had a well out in front with a pump, an old-fashioned wells with a pump. And each kid it was a collapsible aluminum cup. And you carry it in your pocket, and you pull it out when you wanted to use a drink out of it. When you're done, you collapse it back up and put the lid on. But I think everybody had one. We all carried our lunch wrapped in newspapers. I don't think hardly anybody had lunch buckets. We would wrap our lunch in newspapers. The games we played were a lot different than the games the kids play now. We played a game called Zippy, and the marbles was popular, shooting marbles. Of course, it was always softball and tag. And the guys even would bet on who could pee up on the back side of the outhouse further than the other guy could. That was part of the recess entertainment. My dad and mother both were very highly thought of. When Dad died, some people didn't come to the calling hours because they couldn't get within 4 blocks of the funeral home. I mean, they had a steady line there from the time that visitation opened that evening until everybody went home. It was just one steady line. Everybody knew them. And that could be a minus for us because everybody knew my dad and mom knew us. And they would be quick to tell Dad. Dad knew about everybody because he walked every house in town as a mailman. They all knew him. And I remember Dad saying to me, Paul, what was the name of that place where you went to Saturday night in Akron? My God, he heard of Puffy and Louie's. Somebody saw me there and told him, But as long as we didn't drink, as long as we went to church and did our jobs, everything was fine. And Dad played with the kids, just, He was just like one of the kids when we had a ball game or something going on. And I've done that. We've tried that. I think all of us have been the same way with the kids. Well, I'd met this good-looking chick through my buddy and his girlfriend. She was a friend of his girlfriend. And I was working at a job. I was was Republic Steel, where we manufactured metal kitchen cabinets, and we worked 3 shifts. One week would be 7 to 3 in the afternoon, to 3 to 11, and 11 to 7 in the morning. And as it happened, I was on the 11 to 7 shift that day, and we went downtown Canton, Ohio, cruising the streets before I had to go to work. And we're driving down Market Street, and lo and behold, there goes Bob's girlfriend and this gal with her. And they were going to see Spike Jones' band. They had tickets to see a band live at the Palace Theater in Canton. But anyhow, we picked them up and were riding around. They didn't know I had to go to work at 11. So we just rode around, and then it was time for the gals who had tickets to the late show to go to the movie, and we said, you got to take me to work. I can't be late for work. So they missed the movie that night. And they were a little upset about that. But I was a little curious about this gal, and somehow or another, Bob and I got together. We decided to double date. It was okay with Donna, and I certainly wanted to do it. I'd feel more comfortable on a double date than for the first time, and it just went from there. It was good. It was a good relationship. I'd had several girlfriends, but This one seemed to be a little different for some reason. And we went together, gosh, I don't remember how long it was. We just dated on and off. We dated other people too. I had this little blonde that I dated, and I got to thinking, we had a date one Saturday night, the blonde and I said, you know, I got to think, well, I'm afraid to go somewhere around Alliance, Ohio, because Donna might be out that night. So we decided, I said, well, why don't we go to Akron and play miniature golf? And Akron's about, I don't know, 25 miles or so from there. So we go up to Akron, and we're just starting the round on the golf course. And for some reason, I happened to turn around, and there was Donna with another guy. And they were playing Goodnight Irene. And she always told me that that had to be our song, because that's what they were playing when we saw us each cheating. And she asked me, even though when she was in the hospital before she passed away up in Gallatin, she couldn't communicate something, but I sang Goodnight Irene to her, and she just smiled from ear to ear. And she remembered it, and she said, that's our song. That's what we were doing. We saw each other cheating. So, but what a coincidence of all the miniature golf places around there. And we picked what we thought was far enough away, but we never see anybody we'd know. And who's right behind us but the one I eventually married? You know, it was funny. We talked about that quite often. We had a good marriage. We would have been, had she lived a little longer, another month and a half, it would have been 57 years. So, and it was good, and she was good. She was a great mother and a great wife.
I get you in my dream. Stop rambling and stop gambling.
The Korean War had started, and we knew the draft had started, and we decided we wanted to see a little of the country before we got drafted. So we had a friend there who had a brother living in Idaho, and we had met him, and we liked him, and we decided, why don't we just quit work and go out to Idaho, just take a trip out west. And one of my friends, Bob, his mother had just given him a brand new a 49 Kaiser. You know, the Kaiser Fraser cars. This is a 49 Kaiser. We didn't have much money. And I said, you know what, why don't we just go along and let's stop at farmhouses and paint mailboxes for so much. Maybe $1 for the mailbox and maybe 10 cents for the flag, and it's so much for the letter if they want it. And that's what we did. And we started going to Idaho and stopping at farm homes and painting the mailboxes. And it was surprising that you wouldn't believe how many people would feed us or tell us we could sleep in the barn or on the front porch instead of the pup tent. But it was quite an experience, and we got out there and we stopped to see his friend's brother in Emmett, Idaho. And he had a small ranch, and he had another brother out there who was retired, but he's quite an outdoorsman. And somehow or another, we ended up going up in the Rockies with the brother. We'd camp out there for a few days at a time. We lived on trout and Rocky Mountain whitefish, and like bacon and stuff that he'd take along. And he had a nice big tent. We'd go tromping through the Rockies for a few days, and Then we would go back to the brother's ranch and we'd help him out, work with him for a few days, and then go back. And one Sunday, I called home, and my dad answered, and he said, "Boy, I'm glad you called. You got notice that you have to report for your physical next Friday in Canton, Ohio, for the draft." So we had to load up and get back to Ohio for me to take the physical. Now, I don't know how long it was that I had received that letter or not, but if I hadn't called my dad, I wouldn't have known about it. And a month later, after my physical, I was inducted. Okay, let's see. Uh, 22 September 1950 to 24 June 1952. That's how long I was in. And when I was inducted, we went to from Canton to Army Induction Center in New Jersey. And we got our orientation shots and everything then for a few days. And then they shipped us back to Camp Atterbury, which is up here in Indianapolis. And that's where we had our training. We were the first troops to train at Camp Atterbury. Had been a World War II induction separation center. And it was a mess. They'd not maintained it, and part of our work was replacing windows and cleaning and painting and everything else to get that place back in shape. We took a troop ship from Seattle to Yokohama, Japan. And from Yokohama, we got on trains and went down to the south of Japan to Osaka. From there, we took another ferry-type boat across to Korea, to South Korea. We crossed the Sea of Japan from Sasebo to Busan, I believe it was. I can't remember how long it took. It was a long time. It was well over a week on that ship, I know. I wish I may have in some of my letters when we left Japan and when we arrived in Seattle, but I don't really know. I know it was a long time. Was there ever a time when you thought you weren't coming home? Yeah, right off the bat, when I first got over there, when they overran us. I thought then. When I first joined my outfit, it was during what they called the May Offensive. And the enemy really hit us one morning. We had, on one flank of us was South Korean soldiers. They took off and ran. And the enemy came around, broke through there, through the South Korean lines, came up behind us. It was like every man for himself. You had guys behind you shooting at you, guys in front shooting at you. It's hard to find a way to go. And there was myself and there's three or four other guys that we took off together. And they kept coming. We had no place to go. So we laid down in a ditch, which we thought would be safe. But wasn't long, here comes the enemy up. And they shot two of them that I know of. And the other guy and myself were able to sneak out and take off, and we came up to a home. Nobody there. It was a building out in the middle of nowhere. And we thought we'd be safe there, and we got up on the roof to hide because they thought they couldn't see us. We were on the roof when they were coming after us. Well, that was fine. And We still had our weapons. I didn't have any ammo. My ammo was gone. But when these guys came up close, the guy who was with me stood up and fired at him. Well, they got him right off the bat. And I went down off the back of the side of the house. And I found a shrubbery, some kind up there that I was able to get in. And I don't know if they didn't know had been with that guy or not, because I didn't stand up or what. And I was there all night. And the next morning, I woke up. I didn't know what to do, where I was, and I heard this rumbling down below me. And I sneaked up as well as I could just so I could see that road, and here it was our tanks. They were pushing the enemy back. They'd finally taken over. And I went running down there to them, and I was hungry. I hadn't had anything to eat in 24 hours or so. And they got me, they put me on the tank, and they gave me a can of corned beef hash. That's what they had, and they were able to keep that stuff warm because they put it on the engine of the tank, and that stuff would be warm. Well, we would, in the wintertime, have to eat it frozen sometimes. And so then when they found out who I was and what I did, they had me go to the front of the line, and the enemy was retreating so fast that they were not planting any mines or any booby traps. They were just laying them out in the road. And I got out and I would disarm them and throw them off to the side. I'd keep the detonator so they didn't get it. And I'd throw them off the side of the road. And we did that for, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. And we finally pulled up and stopped. But that was, I questioned whether or not I would see Ohio again. It's only natural. So from that time on, we always had the French Foreign Legion on one of our flanks, and they didn't let nobody get through. And they had this, they put them, had the South Koreans next to us, then the French. And the French mined the area behind the South Koreans, so they couldn't run. But anyhow, they wanted me to teach them how to do all of this, and one of the first things they said was, Sarge, can you blow up a whorehouse? I said, I don't know, I've never tried, but I see no reason why I couldn't. I've never blown up anything like that. They said, well, these South Korean girls came up there and they opened shop in a beat-up house down there. And 5 of us went to visit them, and 5 of us got the clap. So we want to blow up the whorehouse. I said, well, I can do it. Get the girls out, and I can do that. They said, oh, no, girls stay. Girls stay. So girls either get out or we don't blow it. So anyhow, I got my way. That's what those guys were like. And they were telling about life in the Legion down there, wherever they sent them in the desert, but they each took a girlfriend with them. They could do that. And then when they get bored with their girlfriend, they'd trade off. Or they'd have, they'd play a game. They'd lay the girls down on their back with their legs spread, and they'd shove a banana in them. Then they'd go down on their stomach to see who can make the banana fly the furthest.
That's disgusting.
But I don't think I can tell that story. But that's the kind of guys I was dealing with. I loved them. They were great. Was it hard to adapting to life there? Well, you really weren't adapting to their life. It's sort of like going camping. except your game didn't shoot back at you camping. But it was rough. Some days I've had days where I've dug 4 or 5 foxholes. We would move up a little bit, and then suddenly things would stop, and we'd move up and dig a foxhole and get ready, we thought. But then it would move some more. Then we'd get up, go dig another foxhole. And sometimes it was rough. If you got down off a mountain toward a river or something, you couldn't dig deep enough to hide you because water would come up through the sand from the river. And you could get it so you could lay on your belly, but you were laying in the water. So it really wasn't a lot of protection. So while I was out there planning these mines and flares, the enemy started shooting at me, and I had bullets just flying by my head. And I jumped off the ridge line and went down and ran back to my outfit. And when I got back, I found that when I jumped off, I apparently tore the pocket off my pants, and my wallet was missing. And in my wallet, I had, in addition to my ID and everything else you would have one, I had this picture of my fiance at the time. She had sent me. She had taken it in June of '51 and sent it to me. And the only thing that was missing from my wallet was that was in my wallet was that picture of now my late wife, and the script, the $1 bill that I had not changed to script. And several weeks later, I was called back to the battalion rear headquarters, and they had my wallet. They had found it on a dead enemy soldier, and in this wallet was a picture of my now wife, and the $1 bill that I had not changed to script. And as far as I'm concerned, the guy who stole my wallet earned what he got. I've carried that with me all these years. It's been 60 years now, and I still have it. It looks like it was moth-eaten, but I have it embossed in plastic, and I'll carry it with me to my grave, I hope. Remember one night we dug our foxholes already, and I said, well, I'm going to lay down in mine and see if I can get a little rest, because you're working hour on, hour off at night. You and the other guy, the two of you to foxhole. And I'm laying there, just about asleep, and all at once I felt something hit me in the face, and I looked up and there was dirt and stuff. And all I saw was an asshole and a pair of balls squatting over my foxhole. And hey! He said, oops, sorry, and he took off. The guy had diarrhea is a big problem when you get in the situation. But man, I'm telling you, I'd never been so scared in my life as I was when I saw it. You can imagine, you're about asleep, and you open up, and you feel this stuff hitting your face, and you see an asshole and a pair of balls hanging there. What are you going to do? You know, it just was terrible. That was about the worst scare I think I ever had. Linerode's bloody butchers is what they said. They weren't that bad. Some of them had reputations, yeah. There was one guy that I didn't even get to know him. I didn't even know he'd been assigned to my platoon. I'd been out on an overnight patrol, sent me on an ambush patrol to capture enemies for interrogation. And I got back up on the ridge that morning. It just turned daylight, and we got one prisoner. You know, we spent those nights uh, down in a bowl and didn't have the luck, and we spent that the next night, and it was hell, it was rough. You lay in a shit-filled rice paddy all night long and all that stuff, and climb them steep mountains, terribly steep mountains. I couldn't get a vehicle up, and then find somebody that's messed up. But we had a prisoner, and we got back to the outfit. It was daylight, and this new guy was there, and the rest of my guys, and I told him I had to file reports and stuff, and you know, take care of this prisoner until MPs get here to pick him up. Well, I had hardly left until this guy had taken his rifle and put it in the guy's head and shot him in the head, killed him, this prisoner that we'd worked for. Well, I did. I pulled my rifle on him too, but I didn't. Had he tried to run, I'd have shot the son of a bitch. But I turned him over to the MPs, and I don't know whatever happened to him. They took him back, and I don't know whatever happened to him. But then I found out that he had been instructing recruits in Hawaii, and that he'd thrown a live grenade amongst a bunch of new recruits. And that's the reason he was shipped to Korea. So, I don't know what they did with somebody that killed your prisoner, but you go through the hell that we went through to get that guy, and then to have him kill him was unbelievable. I had a couple guys from North Carolina that I had to watch. One of them was dippy as hell. Caught him trying to cut a guy's head off one time. He was going to put it in the crotch of a tree, an enemy. You didn't dare do things like that. Although the enemy would get our guys, and they would tie their hands and legs behind them, and they would cut their dick off and shove it in their mouth and tape their mouth shut and let them strangle themselves. They would pull that, and our guys would want to do the same thing, and you didn't dare do it. You could be sent to prison for that if you got caught torturing somebody like that. As I said before, I had to check a lot of our dead, you know, to make sure they weren't booby-trapped. Some guys like that sort of thing. You know, they like that sort of thing. Cutting the head off. Now, we had a couple of guys who had their heads cut off. I didn't, not none of my guys, but the Japanese or the Chinese or North Koreans had cut their heads off and put it in a tree. That's why this guy of mine wanted to do it to reciprocate. But you know, you get when they come on at you, you don't think of them as a human being. It's almost a game. And we'd stand there in our foxholes when they were coming at us, and we'd yell, "Anyone name a shivida! Anyone name a shivida!" That means, "Come here, motherfucker." And that pissed them off. Boy, they got this, that enemy go crazy, and he come at you, and then you got him. That was about as bad as we got. You do a lot of things that you wouldn't even think that you do when you have to. But, you know, you get to where it was a game. It's the only way you could take it. You can look a guy in the face and shoot him. You didn't know. Of course, he's trying to kill me. But you just have to blank it out. some guys loved it. Surprising how, you know, some people can do a thing like that and it doesn't bother them. But I think at least 90% of the guys were bothered with it if they'd stopped to think about it. You know, here comes a guy up there who's never done anything during your life, and you kill him. Of course, he's coming up to kill me, so it's a matter of survival. You just have to blank that out and play like it's hunting rabbits or pheasants. And I think most guys felt that way. They never really talked about it. I never heard anybody really talking about it. So coming up the hill after you shoot them. If they were planning a big attack at night, like, they always, they would get high on marijuana. And, they would play their bugles and shout and make a lot of noise where you hear them across the valley. We knew they were coming after us, so we got ready for them. But I don't know, it's just sort of like games that used to play with kids, hide and seek or whatever. But you just couldn't let it, you couldn't let yourself say, hey, I'm going to kill this, some kid's father or some woman's son or whatever. You couldn't think about that. I had guys who did, and I had a couple of them I had to transfer out of my outfit to a job back in the rear because they were very sincere about it, but they just couldn't handle it. But all in all, I think the guys back then in Vietnam or World War II and World War I, those guys went through a lot of hell. They didn't have the equipment that they have now. And, God, I never had any equipment to hunt out my mines and things or to deactivate them. We had mine detector, but they picked up all shrapnel and everything else. They weren't any good in a combat area. And the best thing to do is pay attention to when you find one and say what you see. What did that look like? How did I notice that? And then you would approach it. And I use my bayonet and always drive it in at an angle so if you don't hit a firing pin or release. But it's, you know, you have to have your head on straight. And some guys couldn't do it. I did not ever try to disarm a mine if there were a situation where I could blow it up without having to tamper with it. Just put a charge of TNT on it and blow it up. And many of those mines, those anti-tank mines, were attached to another anti-tank mine. They would booby trap the mines, so you never knew how many might be down there. So you don't want to dig one loose, dig around one, and then lift it up, because it may be, and chances are it is, attached to another one under it. So it's, you know, it's a little common sense. It takes a little brain work. And you can't be a hysterical kind of person, because you're certainly going to kill yourself and somebody else if you are. They had never seen one. I found it, I think it was an anti-tank mine, if I'm right, rather than anti-personnel, that I found, and they told me that's the first one they had found being used against the United States government. And it was made, I thought it was made in Russia. And it was just all plastic stuff like TNT or something. And as I say, the only metal thing there was the firing pin. Everything else was wood. And they would put one on top of the other. And it took a couple of guys to be blown up. I didn't have, I was fortunate. I did not have a casualty with any of my guys. I did not lose a man. I didn't even have a man that was injured. And we got in some really tight places. But like I said before, I wouldn't take anybody out that I didn't trust. Well, I didn't think he could do the job. I wouldn't go with him, and I wouldn't send anybody else out with him. I just put him down in on the ammo dump and let him handle that. I'd sneak over on their side sometime at night, and they'd be dug into the side of the mountain. I've seen one mountain one time was damn near the size of a gymnasium inside it, where they had dug from one side of that hill to the other and had this big room in there. But you never knew where they were going to see a hole pop out in the side of the mountain, where then they'd lay there and wait for them. And we would go in, and we had a satchel, satchel. I don't remember how many sticks of TNT were in there, or not, maybe C3, not TNT, but C3 we called it. Now they call it C something else. But it's explosives like a lot like TNT. And these bags, they're 5 or 6 pounds, I guess. And we sneak in there and get up there to their, try to get under the hole where they didn't see over around it. And you tie a string on this satchel. Then you'd pull the pin and shove it in the hole in the cave. And boom, it would close it up, and you'd run like hell, get back to your place, and you'd hear them all night long, dig, dig, digging. And by morning, they'd open that hole. That was the job I didn't care for. They had the ridge, and we were trying to take it from them. And they were up on top, and they had bunkers built in with machine gun fire. And it was, where we were trying to get was on the side of a sheer cliff. You had about that much space to walk through, to get over to where you could go up after them. And we had, I don't know, one guy after the other being shot, and it was probably 50, 60 feet down to where they would fall. And they came to me and wanted me to go over there with a flamethrower and try to get up and get that machine gun nest. Well, I went over there. Where to begin with, to handle one of those is just more than you need to be out where you have room to move yourself and all. And to try to walk across that, I got about halfway across that ledge, and they called me back. It just wasn't working. They said, come back, it's not going to work. The guys in front of me all went down. So I never did get up there, and I was glad. That's one time that I would have been glad to refuse the order if they gave it to me, because there was no way it would happen, and anybody with any damn sense would know that. They just picked them off one by one. I mean, just like there's nothing to it for them. But we finally got, and I don't remember how it was that we got around that sort of thing, but it just was. We didn't have enough men in our battalion, and the battalion is made up of 4 companies. We didn't have enough to make one full company. That article tells how many we lost. It was just a massacre. That's rough ground. That's rough territory to try to fight on. But everything had to be carried up. You had to walk up, climb up, crawl up, however you get in there to get your way up. And that's what made it difficult to get to them. Once they had a bunker in that mountain, there was hardly any way to get to them. See, if I fell off this ridge here, fall straight down hundreds of feet, straight down. So if the bullet didn't get you, the fall did. And I think we lost darn near as many falling off as they did getting shot. We took it once, and then they took it back from us, and then we took it again. In some cases, we fought with bayonets. We were that close. And then it gets you, they had no ammo, or how it turns out that we ended. I did not get involved in a fist fight, but quite a few of the guys got involved in a fist fight with the communists. And we had 2 that I told you about that when the rest of us pulled back, they stayed up there fist fighting, and then they were killed. But we did get back in to get the bodies out. So we didn't leave anybody up there. We never tried to leave one of our guys, whether he was dead or alive. The enemy would cut their head off and put it in a tree or somewhere where you could see it. So we didn't. Everybody risked their own lives to get those bodies out of there. People were brutal. And I only had one guy who cracked. Jankowski from Toledo, Ohio. He was one of my best men. He was one of my best mine men. And on Heartbreak Ridge, we needed some kind of supplies. Jankowski and I were going to go back down to get it. Well, you didn't go down the hill if you didn't take a wounded guy with you. And we were carrying this wounded guy on a stretcher, and a sniper shot him, got him right in the head. He'd been shot in the legs. He would recover at that, the leg one. But sniper fired at us, and he got that prisoner right in the head and killed him. But Jankowski just flipped. He just went out of his mind. And that's the only one that I ever had a problem with. And they had to send him back to the hospital. I never did see him again before I left. But I did look him up in Toledo one night when I was there. And I called him, and he was a mailman in Toledo at that time. And I never did ask him about what they did for him, or when he got back to the outfit, or if he did get back. I don't even know if he got back to my outfit, because I had left in the meantime to come home. So I don't know. But I felt very lucky that I didn't lose anybody. That would hurt. But you know, when the dad's getting that kind of a job, they get pretty close to each other. I remember the night of the day that we finally took it. We got to come off the mountain. And we celebrated around a big campfire. And my company commander, the lieutenant, he was so doggone drunk he couldn't walk, so I loaded him in the back of a ammo truck and backed him up to the fireplace, to the side of the fire, or the big blazing fire we had going. And the colonel came up about that time and saw that, and he really considered taking my stripes away for doing such a dumb thing. But we had liquor and beer rations depending on your rank. And we lost so many people that for instance, I don't know how many bottles of scotch I had, how many cases I had coming. I could never drink in a lifetime. But our first night off the line, we stayed up all night around that fire and drinking. And we had a couple North Korean mules that we captured. And we had fun getting thrown off of those. So, but there was not much left of trees and things like that when that battle was over with. It could have been beautiful country, those hills and the trees and everything. But not after the battles, they weren't. Trees were all splintered down. It was a mess. I always often wondered how many people may have been injured or killed by some of the mines that I planted and never recorded. We were supposed to record everything, every booby trap, every mine that you planted. But you go out there at night and a lot of them, I would say probably 85 to 90% of my laying mines was out there at night. I'm usually by myself. I didn't take anybody with me unless I had something that was going to require help. So anyhow, it was an experience. I would not any of my sons or grandsons have to go through it, or anybody else. We were lucky. I had three brothers actually at the same time I was in, but none of them went to Korea. Up there, my brother that's on your left was at Fort Knox. He was a tank operator. The one in the middle was Air Force, Ronnie. He was an intellectual, and he helped to design some of the navigation things for fighter planes. And of course, myself and then I had another brother who's not there with us, and he also was a tank driver, and he went to Germany. But that was an experience. I can't say I'm glad I went through it. I'm glad I survived it and unscathed. And I wouldn't want to go through it again. I wouldn't want to see anybody. It seemed like it took forever to get home. And when I came back into Seattle where I went out. And we went to Fort Custer, Michigan, which is not too far from where I lived in Ohio, probably 300 miles, maybe 400. And the only thing my parents knew, they saw in the paper they had a list of local guys who were on the way back from Korea, and they had me listed, my name in the papers on the way back. And how they knew when I was coming, I'll never know. But we got off the trains. That's when we came back from Seattle to Fort Custer. We got off the trains that evening, and we were marching somewhere to get our further orders. What we did from that point, and I heard somebody say, "There he is, Paul." And it was my dad. And my dad and mom had driven up there, not knowing I was going to be there for sure. And they saw me marching in there with all those troops. So that was, I never expected that. And we went home that night. I got to go home with them that night. I didn't have to stay over. They ran me through a processing procedure real quickly and gave me a pass to go home. So that was one they got on me. How they knew that I was going to be coming on that shipment, I don't know. It was in the paper that I was on the ship on the way home, but the clipping they showed me, and it had my name, that I was on it, me and a guy from Canton, Ohio that I was inducted with. But how they knew I'd be there that evening and that train is beyond me. It was an experience. I certainly wouldn't want to go through it again. Wouldn't want anybody else to. But it was good to get back home.